Thank you, Presiding Officer, and it's a great privilege to follow Edward Mountain. I'd first like to begin by addressing my remarks to my constituents. This is a debate unlike any other. It's a free vote, but also the importance of this debate means that I'd just like to say to them that I take my responsibilities very seriously, and my position this evening reflects both the broad views communicated to me over my time as an MSP since 2016, which have broadly been in favour, but also those which have been more critical, particularly the balance in recent weeks and at the event that I held last week in my constituency. But I do believe that society's views have changed, that this is an important moment for Parliament to discuss this, and we should try as best we can to form a settled view. And above all else, I think we need to do so on the basis of principles, which is why this evening I will vote for it at stage one, but I will reserve my position because I do have a number of concerns which I will set out. But to those principles, I have found myself reflecting when I have observed friends and family members facing their final moments of life. Should they have this option? And I've thought to myself, if I've seen them face the end of their life, what would I want? Should we be giving people the choice, while capacity, capability, opportunity are being removed from them, this final piece of control, this final element of decision-making over their lives? My answer to that basic fundamental principle is yes. Now, you can call that bodily autonomy, decision-making of the individual, but fundamentally it boils down to that. Would you want that choice? Would you want that choice for others? It's not to say that it needs to be taken, but should it be there? I also, in facing these matters, think about the harm principle, which is that the only purpose which people can be prevented from doing things is the degree to which it causes harm to others. And in terms of that basic act, I do not see the harm, which is why I think Parliament needs to fully consider these matters. I think it has to expose all the detail through stage two to challenge whether or not it can meet the concerns which I think are there. And indeed, there are wider harms that we need to consider. The pressure on the individual, potential for changed relationships, both with family members and professionals, particularly clinicians, and in terms of social outcomes, the changed expectations people might have at the end of life. But I do believe this bill, as it stands, has provisions which address some of these, but I think it perhaps could go further. For me, and this is an important point, this is about an autonomous act. The final act is one that the individual would need to take for themselves. I could not have voted for the previous bills because it was not that case. Now, I think this is important for clinical relationships. I think those are fundamentally altered if that final act is delivered by a clinician. But most importantly, it's about consent. The ability to remove one's consent, withdraw it at that final moment, can only be achieved if it's an autonomous act. But I do have concern about whether or not this element of the bill is robust. I recognise it's in the policy memorandum, but is it on the face of the bill in sufficient strength? Likewise, the definition itself around terminal illness. This is incredibly important. We have seen expansion of similar legislation in other countries. I think it is important that this is about acceleration of a process that is inevitable for the individual. I think it is important that this is not about providing death where death is not essentially there. And I think in terms of avoiding those dangerous social outcomes, those changed expectations, this definition is critical. But I do worry that in terms of the way it is framed, that there is the possibility of expansion, that the curtailment of life is not sufficiently clear, that those with long-term chronic conditions with reduced life expectancies could meet that definition. So I think that needs to be tightened up. But above all else, I think we do need to be alive to the possibility of social effects. But I think all of these things can be looked at through the parliamentary process, need to be resolved. And I'm not saying that any of these things would be necessarily sufficient conditions, but I think these are the areas that need to have the closest look. We need to have a look at the definition. I think issues such as the timing and the declaration itself, the declaration from the clinicians that they are clear that the person is free of coercion or pressure is important. And above all else, I think there being a no detriment principle both to individuals but also organisations to opt out is vitally important. In the end, I would just say it like this, that death is an inevitability for all of us. This is about providing options and control in a situation where those are being removed from people because of life itself. This is about a balance of competing but equally strong and compelling arguments. But I take this ultimate view that death in itself is not a harm, but the nature of death can be. Our decision tonight is whether or not we think we can improve those circumstances, improve the people's situation as their life comes to an end. And I know that colleagues will make the right decision based on their own consciences. Thank you.